husband opened the fridge, froze, and whispered, "Who put that there?" I thought it was just a birthday cake until the police showed up. What was really inside the fridge? Before we dive into the story, don't forget to subscribe and tell us in the comments, which city are you watching from? The scent of vanilla and almond usually filled our kitchen with warmth, a comforting prelude to celebration. Today, it was Tom's 35th birthday, and my mother, Eleanor, had outdone herself, as always. "A surprise, darling," she'd chirped over the phone, her voice as sweet as the buttercream she so expertly whipped. I'd imagined a classic vanilla sponge, perhaps with raspberry filling, just the way Tom liked it. He walked in from his late shift, tie loosened, the familiar weariness etched around his eyes. "Happy birthday, love," I murmured, kissing his cheek. "Your present's in the fridge. Mum dropped it off earlier." A small smile touched his lips. "Ah, Eleanor's magic then." He patted over, pulling open the stainless steel door. The soft hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. And then he froze. It wasn't a subtle pause, not a moment of quiet contemplation. It was an instantaneous, absolute stillness, as if the very air had solidified around him. His hand, still gripping the refrigerator door handle, went rigid. His shoulders, usually slumped with fatigue, were ramrod straight. My heart gave a strange, uncomfortable lurch. "Tom?" I asked, a thread of unease weaving into my voice. "What is it? Is it not the right kind of cake?" I chuckled, trying to dispel the sudden tension. He didn't answer. His gaze was fixed, unblinking, on something inside the fridge. His face, usually so expressive, was a mask of utter bewilderment, quickly morphing into something colder, starker. His eyes, usually warm and reassuring, were wide, dilated, reflecting a horror I couldn't yet comprehend. Then, he turned his head slowly, his eyes locking onto mine. The warmth was gone, replaced by a chilling, distant stare. His lips parted, and a whisper barely audible escaped them. "Who put that there?" My brow furrowed. "Who put what there?" "The cake, darling. Mum did. I just told you." I took a step closer, peering over his shoulder, expecting to see a ruined frosting design or perhaps a misplaced candle. But the cake was perfect, a pristine two-tier vanilla cake, adorned with delicate sugar roses in pale pink and cream. A silver happy birthday topper gleamed on the top tier. It looked exactly like the kind of elegant homemade masterpiece my mother always produced. Yet Tom's expression had changed again. The bewilderment was gone, replaced by a grim, terrifying certainty. His jaw tightened, a muscle twitching in his cheek. He didn't move, didn't touch the cake, didn't even breathe, it seemed. He just stood there, staring at it, then at me, then back at the cake, as if trying to reconcile two impossible realities. "Tom, what's wrong?" I pressed, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. His silence was deafening, far more unsettling than any shout could have been. He finally pulled his hand from the fridge door, letting it swing gently closed with a soft click. He stepped back, his eyes never leaving the cake, even through the closed door. He pulled out his phone, his movements stiff, almost robotic. He dialed, his gaze still fixed on the refrigerator. "It's Tom. I need a unit. My address. Now. And forensics. Tell them it's the baker's dozen." His voice was low, clipped, devoid of emotion. My blood ran cold. The baker's dozen. The name of the serial killer case that had been plaguing the city for months. 13 victims, all found with a signature item, a perfectly baked homemade vanilla cake adorned with sugar roses. A chilling calling card. Even as he spoke, a part of me instinctively dismissed it. My mother's cakes, while perfect, had a certain homemade charm, a familiar warmth that surely couldn't be mistaken for the cold, precise signature of a killer. My husband, Detective Tom Hayes, was one of the lead investigators on the case. "Tom, what are you talking about?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "That's my mother's cake. She made it for your birthday." He finally tore his gaze from the fridge and looked at me, his eyes filled with a profound sorrow that twisted my gut. "Sarah," he said, his voice hoarse, "that cake, It's not an exact match, but some of the details are eerily similar. The roses, the frosting, the exact shade of pink. It's too close to the killer's signature. My mind reeled. Eleanor? My sweet, doting, church-going mother? The woman who baked cookies for the local charity drive and knitted scarves for the homeless? The idea was so preposterous, so utterly insane, that I almost laughed. But the grim set of Tom's jaw, the terror in his eyes, stopped me. No, I breathed, shaking my head. No, you're wrong. She wouldn't. We don't touch anything, Tom said, his voice firmer now, slipping into his professional cadence. Not a thing. Just wait. We stood there, frozen in the middle of our kitchen, the mundane sounds of our home suddenly amplified, the gentle hum of the refrigerator, the distant chirping of birds, the frantic pounding of my own heart. The air grew thick with unspoken dread. And then, the sirens. Faint at first, a distant wail growing louder, closer, until they shrieked to a halt right outside our quiet suburban home. Red and blue lights flashed through the kitchen window, painting our familiar space in an eerie, pulsating glow. Our house, usually a sanctuary, was suddenly a crime scene. Tom moved then, finally. He walked to the front door, pulling it open just as a swarm of uniformed officers and plainclothes detectives descended upon our lawn. Detective Miller, Tom's partner, was among them, his face a mask of shock as he saw Tom. Tom? What the hell is going on? Miller's eyes darted from Tom's grim face to me, standing pale and trembling in the kitchen doorway. It's here, Miller, Tom said, his voice flat. The cake, in my fridge. Miller's eyes widened, then narrowed. He glanced at the flashing lights, the curious neighbors already peeking from behind curtains. Your house? Are you sure? I'm sure, Tom said, stepping aside to let them in. The kitchen was soon swarming with forensic technicians in white suits, their movements precise and methodical. They treated our home as if it were a biohazard zone, every surface a potential source of evidence. My mother's cake, the centerpiece of Tom's birthday celebration, was now the most terrifying object in our house. I watched, numb, as a technician carefully opened the fridge, took photos from every angle, and then with gloved hands gently lifted the cake onto a sterile tray. It was placed into a clear evidence box, sealed, and carried out. The silver happy birthday topper seemed to mock the grim proceedings. Sarah, Tom said, his hand on my arm, his touch surprisingly gentle amidst the chaos. You need to tell them everything. When your mother brought it, what she said, everything. I nodded, my throat tight. How could I explain something I didn't understand? How could I reconcile the image of my sweet mother with the chilling reality of a serial killer's signature? The questioning began. I sat on our living room couch, now covered in a protective sheet, answering questions about Eleanor, about the cake, about anything that seemed even remotely relevant. I recounted how Eleanor had called that morning, excited about Tom's birthday, how she'd insisted on baking him a cake, her special recipe. She'd dropped it off around noon, while I was out running errands. She'd left it on the counter, covered with a note. Happy birthday, Tommy. Love, Mum. I'd simply transferred it to the fridge. Did she seem unusual in any way? Detective Miller asked, his gaze piercing. No, I insisted, my voice cracking. She was perfectly normal, happy, excited for Tom. Tom sat beside me, silent, his face etched with a pain I couldn't fully decipher. He knew the details of the baker's dozen case better than anyone. He knew the victims, the gruesome specifics, the chilling consistency of the cakes. And now, that same cake was found in his own home, delivered by his own mother-in-law. The next few days were a blur of police presence, hushed conversations, and the suffocating weight of suspicion. Eleanor was brought in for questioning. She was bewildered, tearful, insisting it was all a terrible misunderstanding. My Tommy's birthday cake? A murder weapon? Oh, dear Lord, what are they saying? She'd cried to me over the phone, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine distress. I wanted to believe her, desperately. My mother, Eleanor Vance, was a pillar of our community. A retired librarian, she spent her days volunteering at the local animal shelter, tending her rose garden and baking for anyone who needed a pick-me-up. She was the epitome of gentle kindness. The idea of her being a cold-blooded killer was not just absurd, it was blasphemous. But Tom's silence, his grim determination, chipped away at my certainty. He didn't accuse, but he didn't defend either. He just worked. He spent hours on the phone poring over files, his face drawn. "The forensic report on the cake is back," he told me one evening, his voice flat. "The ingredients, the specific type of flour, the unique sugar blend. It's a match to all 13 cakes." My breath hitched. "But it's her recipe. It's unique to her." "Exactly," he said, his eyes meeting mine, filled with a terrible sadness. "It's unique to her." The police started digging deeper into Eleanor's life, her movements, her past, her associations. I tried to help, providing alibis, vouching for her character, but every piece of information I offered seemed to twist into something sinister, under the harsh light of suspicion. I remembered Eleanor's meticulousness in the kitchen, her insistence on using only a specific brand of organic flour, sourced from a small, obscure mill upstate. Her peculiar habit of grinding her own sugar, claiming it gave the frosting a finer texture. Her precise measurements, down to the gram. I'd always found it endearing, a testament to her dedication. Now, it felt like a chilling ritual. Then, there were the roses. Eleanor's garden was famous for them. She grew dozens of varieties, but her sugar roses were always a perfect pale pink, matching the blush of her favorite hybrid tea rose. The killer's cakes all featured identical sugar roses. I'd never thought twice about it. Why would I? It was just my mother's signature. One afternoon, a week after the incident, Tom and Miller asked if I would accompany them to Eleanor's house. She was being questioned again, and they wanted me there, perhaps hoping my presence would make her more cooperative, or perhaps to observe her reaction to my presence. Eleanor's house was a haven of floral scents and antique furniture. She greeted us with a strained smile, her eyes red-rimmed. She offered tea, her hands trembling slightly as she poured. She looked fragile, vulnerable. "Mum, they just need to ask a few more questions," I said, trying to offer reassurance. "Of course, darling," she murmured, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. "Anything to clear my name. This is simply dreadful." As Miller and another detective questioned Eleanor in the living room, Tom excused himself to use the restroom. I wandered into the kitchen, a space I knew as well as my own. It was spotless, as always. The familiar scent of vanilla still lingered, ghost-like. My eyes fell on a small wooden recipe box on the counter. Eleanor's prized possession, filled with handwritten recipes passed down through generations. I'd often teased her about her reliance on it, even in the age of online recipes. My gaze drifted to the small antique radio on the windowsill. Eleanor loved listening to classical music while she baked. Next to it, tucked beneath a stack of old cookbooks, was a newspaper. The headline screamed, "Baker's Dozen Suspects Still at Large." My blood ran cold. Eleanor never kept old newspapers. She recycled them religiously. And why would she keep a newspaper about the Baker's Dozen case? She claimed she barely followed the news, especially not such gruesome stories. I picked it up. It was dated a week after the 12th victim was found, just before the 13th. My eyes scanned the article. It mentioned the specific type of sugar used in the killer's cakes, a detail that had only been released to the public very recently, and only after the forensic report on the 12th cake. A detail Eleanor had known and used for decades. A chilling thought took root in my mind, growing with terrifying speed. Eleanor's unique sugar blend, her insistence on grinding her own sugar. Could it be that the killer's signature wasn't just the cake, but the specific, almost untraceable ingredients that made it unique? Ingredients that only Eleanor would use? I heard Tom's footsteps behind me. I quickly put the newspaper back, my heart pounding. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. I shook my head, unable to speak, my gaze fixed on the recipe box. Later that evening, after we'd left Eleanor's house, Tom was quiet. He didn't press me about what I'd seen. He didn't need to. He knew. The next morning, the official warrant was issued. Eleanor Vance was arrested at her home. I sat in the police station numb, as Tom explained. The forensic team had found trace elements of a rare, specific type of soil on the bottom of the cake box from our fridge. Soil that matched samples taken from the burial sites of several of the baker's dozen victims. Soil that was unique to Eleanor's rose garden. And then, the confession. Not to me, not to Tom, but to the detectives. Eleanor, my sweet, doting mother, confessed to being the baker's dozen killer. Her motive was as twisted as it was chilling. The victims, she claimed, were all people who had, in her eyes, committed unforgivable acts of betrayal. A cheating spouse, a corrupt politician, a doctor who had mishandled a case, a business partner who had swindled someone. Each cake was a symbolic offering, a twisted form of justice delivered by her own hand. She saw herself as an avenging angel, cleansing the world of its impurities, one perfect cake at a time. And the cakes? They were her way of leaving a mark, a signature of her artistry, her meticulousness. "They deserved it, Sarah," she'd said during a visitation, her eyes surprisingly clear, almost serene. "They betrayed trust. They hurt others. I merely corrected their mistakes." Her voice was calm, devoid of remorse, as if discussing a particularly stubborn stain on a tablecloth. I stared at her, a stranger in my mother's skin, the woman who had taught me to bake, to love, to be kind. The woman who had brought me into this world was also the monster who had taken 13 lives. The cake she had baked for Tom's birthday, my husband the detective, was meant to be her final triumphant masterpiece, the ultimate irony, a gift to the man who was hunting her, delivered right into his unsuspecting hands. Our lives shattered into a million pieces. The vanilla scent in our kitchen now carried a phantom stench of death. Every memory of my mother, every loving gesture, every shared laugh was tainted by the horrifying truth. The woman I knew was a meticulously crafted lie, a beautiful facade concealing a monstrous darkness. Tom and I clung to each other, navigating the wreckage of our family. The case was closed, the killer apprehended. But the scars remained, deep and unyielding. Every time I opened the refrigerator, I saw not just a cake, but the chilling reflection of a secret so profound. It had devoured everything I thought I knew about love, family, and the quiet horrors that can hide in plain sight. The taste of vanilla would forever be bitter on my tongue.